Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Good evening. Welcome to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Lindsey Davis Stover. And this evening I have joining with me Bryan Graham, who's chair of the Fairfax County Democratic Committee. Bryan, thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Oh, thank you so much for having me today.
Well, let's start out. Our audience the majority of our audience is from Fairfax, but the show does extend the entire state. Can you talk a little bit about the Democratic Committee, how big the committee is and what the responsibilities are?
Sure, I'll answer that, but first I just want to remind everyone about the importance of this election. I know we're just starting off on top, but nothing is more important to the future of our country and our nation and to Fairfax County than to elect Joe Biden and defeat Donald Trump. Our freedom as a people, our reputation and future as a global competitor, the ability of our children to grow up free and healthy and well-educated are all at risk. This is just a tremendous opportunity for us to all vote this year. So with that in mind, FCDC is a tremendously powerful, or the Fairfax County Democratic Committee is a tremendously powerful force here locally. More than 1 in 8 voters in the Commonwealth of Virginia live in Fairfax County, and more than 1 in 5 of them are Democrats, or more than 1 in 5 of the voters in the Commonwealth who are Democrats live in Fairfax County as well. So our organization itself, we have more than 1,000 members, and we are just a passionate group of people that are working hard to make sure that we don't give up on any of the progress that we've made over the last couple of years. Our membership is elected to represent the Democrats of the county, kind of as a formal extension of the Democratic Party of Virginia. And our purpose and our responsibility primarily are to elect Democrats to office. And we do that primarily through volunteerism of all types, from campaign activities to things like voter registration. We work to promote our values and encourage participation in the democratic process, because when we do that, Democrats will win. So that's kind of FCDC in a nutshell.
And Bryan, I know we've talked about this before, but FCDC is one of the largest Democratic committees in the country. And I think that is such a telling statement, and one, how powerful the committee is, but 2, the representation it has, not just in Virginia, but we saw in 2016, exciting things happen in Fairfax County, and Fairfax County in many ways set the tone for the entire country. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of the organization and the strength of it, because it is so large?
Right, of course. I mean, Fairfax County is larger than 8 states, right? So, in itself. So it's a huge organization, really, that has a lot of the power of the Democratic Party in Virginia here in Fairfax County. It comes through our party, and of course, I was thinking about talking about it some other time, but in the 2019 election in Virginia, we elected a new Democratic majority. We swept the state, and a lot of that comes through the leadership and power. FCDC, or Fairfax County, is kind of turns into the center of power for Democrats in Virginia, because now we have in the 400-year history of the Commonwealth of Virginia, for the first time ever, we have a woman who's the Speaker of the House of Delegates, and we also have the lead, and also she's the first Jewish person to be the Speaker of the House of Delegates, and we also have the leader of the Senate as well, the Virginia Senate. So Fairfax County and FCDC are really a force in Virginia politics.
Absolutely. And as we talked earlier, a lot of conversations right now people are having online, right? And because people are home more, in a way, they're more politically engaged and interested in the news coming out of the day. Can you talk a little bit about outside of the presidential, which I want to get into again because it's so important. I want to discuss it several times this evening with you. But outside of the presidential, can you talk a little bit about the other races that will be on the ballot, the local races that'll be on the ballot in November?
Right. Of course, we talked about president, and I'll talk about it as much as I can probably, but we're also voting for U.S. Senator and House of Representatives. And then in Fairfax County, well, in all of Virginia, we have 2 constitutional amendments that will be up on our ballot as well. And then we also, in Fairfax County, will have 4 bond issues. So there's a whole bunch of things to decide on our ballots this year. I guess let's talk about Mark Warner first,
Sure.
the senior senator from Virginia. If you think about what's been going on kind of since 2016, if you think about what happened in the 2016 election with foreign interference, Mark Warner is the ranking Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, right? He is the vice chair of that committee, and it's critically important that we keep him there, especially as we're heading into this election now, when we're hearing things about China and Russia kind of interfering in our election again. So to kind of maintain Mark Warner into, I guess this would be his second reelection, into his third term, I think is critically important for especially in the larger context of making sure that we win the Senate this year, but in the country. But locally, that means voting for Mark Warner. And his Republican opponent kind of comes off a little bit as like more of a moderate guy. He seems like he kind of tries to talk a little bit in the middle of the line. And then he shows up to a congressional district convention with hundreds of people without wearing a mask indoors, talks about how masks are tyranny. And he just, will flout public health directives and call them tyranny to score political points. He debases himself to win points with his base. When even Fox News polls say that 80% of Americans think that wearing a mask is a good thing to do. So, Mark, I obviously don't think there's a choice there, and we need to support Mark Warner. We have 3 congressional districts in Fairfax County of the 11 in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We have Don Beyer in the 8th congressional district, Jerry Connolly in the 10th, and Jennifer Wexton, say that again, Jerry Connolly in the 11th and Jennifer Wexton in the 10th, all with Republican challengers, all who kind of are toting the same lines of being with the president, wanting to build, waste money on building walls, ineffective walls, having all kinds of conspiracy theories about the coronavirus, and think that Democrats are trying to take away everyone's guns, when we can reelect 3 Congress persons who have done a great job, I think, in advocating for us. Don Beyer is a big, passionate person when it comes to the environment, which is a huge kind of issue. Jerry Connolly has been critical on transportation in his fighting for the Postal Service right now. We're making, and obviously Jennifer Wexton, we're talking about the progress that we've made here locally in defeating Barbara Comstock. We have made a lot of progress in making these safer districts, but none of them really are safe with the coronavirus. We need to make sure that everyone votes. And then I can talk about I don't know, it might be, I can talk about the constitutional amendments if we want, or
let's do that.
It's too detailed.
Yeah, no, Bryan, I think that would be really important because I think a lot of times, especially when big elections, people start to get more familiar with who is on the ballot, right? But
Right.
you often see people go into voting polling places, or even now, hopefully a lot of people will be voting by mail. And maybe haven't heard a lot of discussion about the constitutional amendment. So I'd love for you to go into the 2 on the ballot and explain a little bit more about those.
Sure. So it's the constitutional amendment process is kind of interesting in Virginia, where the General Assembly passes a bill and it has to be voted on twice by the electorate for it to become part of the Constitution. I guess say that again, it has to pass the General Assembly twice, and then we have to vote on it. So that's where we are now with 2 of the constitutional amendments. And just to for informational purposes, the Fairfax County Democratic Committee hasn't yet taken opinion on any of these, so I'm just going to kind of talk about what they are.
Okay.
But we don't have a stance on which way we're voting at this point. So one of them adds a tax exemption for military disabled, service disabled veterans on the car tax, because the taxation authority in Virginia comes from the Constitution. So all the exemptions have to go into the Constitution as well. So that passed, I think, almost unanimously both times it went through the General Assembly. Doesn't seem very controversial, but that's one of them. The other one is about creating a redistricting commission. So changing the way that we do redistricting in Virginia, which I think is an important thing that as Democrats we've talked about a lot over the years in kind of trying to get rid of gerrymandering or the creation of districts by the legislators themselves. So this bill creates a commission external from the legislative process, but it has 8 legislators on it and 8 citizens and 8 citizens are appointed by a judicial council. And they have to come up with kind of a supermajority plan that everyone agrees with for the commission to send that plan to the General Assembly to vote on. So we're making some changes there, but we'll see. Like I said, the Fairfax County Democratic Committee's next meeting is on July 28th, and we'll be having a discussion and voting or taking positions on those as well as the 4 bond initiatives that are on the Fairfax County ballot this year.
Well, thank you for that, because I think that's such an important education of what is going to be on our ballot come November. And I know we've talked a lot about Fairfax County, and yes, it's incredibly important, not just to the Commonwealth, but to the entire country. But talk a little bit, are there some other races outside of Fairfax County that you're really tracking in terms of making sure either we protect some seats in Congress or some big elections that could be potential flips? What other races are you tracking?
Right. So obviously our focus is on electing Democrats in Fairfax County, but sure, we also have the kind of privilege or benefit of being a fairly democratic place now. So as long as everyone votes here, we should win. So obviously we're going to push for that, but we are looking at some other things, right? So elsewhere in Virginia, some of the other members of Congress that we picked up, the women members of Congress that we picked up, Elaine Luria in the 2nd and Abigail Spanberger in the 7th, potentially are at risk there. If you look at their races, they're kind of toss-ups or maybe lean Democrats. So we basically need to fight to make sure that we keep them in Congress. And I think there might be, another seat or so that we could pick up in Virginia as well. So a lot of our districts have kind of, they'll write postcards to these districts, especially that now that we're in the current environment that we are in now. And then they'll plug into the campaigns and do phone banking and text banking into those locations as well, just to make sure that we have a voice there. And we've also been looking at doing that potentially outside of the state as well. And I know that at least one of our districts is mailing postcards to Arizona, which is a Senate pickup place. And then also just for Pennsylvania for, making sure that we win the presidential there. But obviously, in addition to winning back the presidency, the kind of the biggest thing that we really want to do is to take back the Senate, right? And of course, that doesn't really start in Fairfax County because we already have a Democratic senator. But only of the 35 Senate seats that are up for election this year, only 12 of them are Democrats. So there are just kind of numerically options, possibilities that we can pick up opportunities in Arizona, which I already mentioned, but Colorado and Maine are opportunities there. We have kind of a potential risk with Doug Jones in Alabama losing a Democratic senator, and we might have a decent shot at North Carolina too. So FCDC with 1,000 members and even more volunteers, is organizing people to write postcards to these areas to make sure that we win here big, but we also win across the country.
That's fantastic, because you're right. I mean, we here in Fairfax County have the luxury of, in many ways, having a very Democratic county. And so I love that the committee is really looking outside of the county to also see where we can be of help. Because as you said before, this is one of the most important, if not the most important election of our lifetime. And I know, and we keep hearing that every 4 years. In Virginia, we hear it every year because we have elections every year. But the gravity of this particular election, I think everybody can feel right now. And places like Texas and Arizona and Colorado are now in play that hadn't been in play before. So things are changing, and it's exciting to be in a county where we can not only make sure that we win big in Fairfax County, but that we can help and look beyond the county as well. So I know we started off the show. You started off brilliantly talking about Joe Biden, but I want to really talk more about what's at stake in November, because I think people are really now starting to look at the economic crisis our country is in, looking at the pandemic, and in many ways how poorly it's been handled and managed, but also just looking at the last 4 years and wanting something different. And you keep hearing about, there's a section of people who voted for Obama, but yet then voted for Trump. How do you think all of this is going to play out? How do you think the economy and the pandemic are really going to play in the November election as we continue to get closer and closer to Election Day?
Right. So obviously, just my kind of personal thought on this is there are a lot of Republicans that voted for Donald Trump, kind of just voting to see what would happen. Mm-hmm. And of course, the stock market doesn't reflect reality. And those I guess I'll call them white Republicans, aren't being locked up in cages. They're not being kind of arrested or whatever else. They're doing kind of okay, right, generally, until the coronavirus happens. So, I talk about silver linings all the time. Donald Trump is a silver lining that has kind of energized and created a whole bunch of change that will benefit us for a while, both negatively and also, I guess, adversely. But I think that if you're kind of one of those middle of the road Republicans and you consider kind of the ineptitude of this response, if you go back and look at past Democratic presidents or presidents in this country that have faced crises, right, they almost inevitably get a huge boost in their favorability in a response by taking the stand as a leader and kind of leading us through the crisis, whether it's George W. Bush in 9/11 or whatever else. You look at any of those numbers, and those presidents kind of secure their reelection. But Donald Trump and his administration has just kind of completely wasted the opportunity of this virus to stand up and be a leader and to show that you can have a coordinated national response and that you can kind of protect the economy and everything else and the health of everyone else, right? If Donald Trump was out at the very beginning wearing a mask, now he's kind of admitted that it's okay to wear a mask or that you should wear a mask, I guess now, 2 months later. But the delay in not being a leader will lead this crisis to last even longer and has killed many more people than should have died, right? So I honestly think that is kind of a great opportunity for us to just show that there is no leadership in Washington right now. And Donald Trump just pretends to be a law and order president, but he just kind of he stretches every limit of his power in every way possible, from the clearing of Lafayette Park so that he could of peaceful protesters so that he could have a photo op, right, to the firing of inspector generals. There is no doubt that he is abusing his power, and if he allows to do so for another 4 years, the harm may not be reversible, right? Like I don't know exactly what that would look like, but I know a whole bunch of people don't want to see it. So I think that there's an enormous opportunity for us to take a stand with Joe Biden and get rid of Donald Trump.
I saw today, I think it was breaking news that said Biden is quoted saying Trump has given up on our country, right? And I think you have seen that reflection and the feelings that people have that are in line with that, even in the polls coming out in some really tough states. And you talked about Pennsylvania earlier and how many Fairfax County Democrats are writing postcards to help in battleground states. What do you see as kind of the potential battleground states that Democrats, not just in Fairfax County, but across the country, should really be honing in on?
I wish I had a better list for you. I actually was on the Joe Biden Virginia leaders call the other day, and they gave us kind of the list, and it's actually kind of surprising that Virginia is not a battleground state anymore. I mean, it kind of warms my heart that we're in the Democratic column, but obviously there are states like Pennsylvania. I mean, it's amazing that even Texas is in play now. Because I mean, if Joe Biden wins Texas, the math it's
right.
Game over, right? Mm-hmm. Donald Trump cannot win. So I'm sorry I don't have a complete list for you, but I'm just very excited with the opportunity. I mean, with looking at everything that's out there, there's a good chance that we will be successful this year, but we have to fight through the attacks that come from this government and through, I guess, the extension through Republican state governments to kind of remove people from voter rolls and make it harder to vote by mail, or even now, kind of slowing down the postal service is kind of seems what the new Postmaster General that was appointed by Trump is trying to do, and obviously that's going to have an effect on the outcome of this race. So. We just all have to fight everywhere and stand up. We can't take it for granted, even here in Fairfax County in Virginia.
Absolutely. You made such an important point by saying that Virginia is no longer on the battleground list, right? And just maybe 2-3 years ago, we were, right? And can you talk a little bit about kind of the energy right now in Fairfax County and what you're feeling? And clearly things look so much different in terms of campaigning, given where we are. And I know in the next segment, we'll talk even more about that. But can you just give us a general overview of kind of the enthusiasm and the feeling you have here in Fairfax County and Virginia in general? Because I think it's really important.
Yeah, of course. Going back to November 8th, 2016, just think about kind of how, and especially the next day when we all had the results, it was just kind of a sad evening, right? But and I talk about silver linings all the time. The silver lining of that is that we had people come out of the woodwork kind of like never before. So from our committee itself, if you look at our membership, of the ages of our membership, the number of people that had been FCDC members before Trump that had school-aged children was actually pretty low compared to the number of people that are like that in the county. But when that happened, there was a dramatic change. People could not stand silently aside anymore, which we saw kind of, on the second day of office, right, with the Women's March, right, that people were energized and have been energized. And I think we've kind of seen that extend into what we're calling the blue wave, right, from Fairfax County to kind of, in Virginia, completely taking Democratic control. So there's been a huge boost in our membership, the diversity of our membership, and people are energized and passionate as ever to win.
I love that you talked about the diversity of the membership, because I think that's so important. I remember many, many years ago going to my local committee meeting, recognizing right off the bat, I was clearly the youngest one in the room prior to 2016. And the demographics of our local committee has changed dramatically, which has been incredible to see the new enthusiasm. And I love, we were talking about it before, PTA meetings and different church meetings or gatherings all across the county and the Commonwealth, people have a different level of engagement. Whether or not they're officially a part of the Democratic Committee here in Fairfax, there is a different level of engagement and conversation that's going on. And I think you're absolutely right. If there is a silver lining in any of this, it is the level of engagement and awareness that people have. And what I love seeing too is it's not just the awareness on the national level, but people are really starting to see the importance of local elections. And, for example, school board, we here in Fairfax County, right? I just found out today we may go all virtual, right? But we, as parents, had a pretty big decision to make last week. And so it's been exciting to see the level of engagement at every single level of the elections here in Fairfax.
Yeah, I think we definitely still have a lot to do. I mean, I kind of was the same way when because I joined the committee right after of the Obama campaign. I got involved in the Obama campaign just like a lot of people did, in energizing a new set of people to get involved in the democratic process, which created a whole bunch of new members as well. But there's still a lot of the Democratic Party kind of operation is still kind of inside baseball stuff. You have to take time out of your time on like a weeknight to go kind of participate in a meeting. Although right now it's all virtual, so maybe it's a little bit easier to do. But another silver lining. But still, I mean, there are kind of when we talk, and we'll probably talk about it a little bit as well, in kind of the racial justice, Black Lives Matter movement that we've seen. There's still a lot of things that we need to do, and there are constructs even in our organization, a Democratic organization, that make it harder for people of diverse backgrounds to participate. Fairfax County is kind of one of the most diverse places probably in the world. I don't know, right? I know the former school board member, now the Board of Supervisors member, Dahlia Palchik, said that that school students in Fairfax County speak every language in the world. So we have such a diverse community, and we are continually looking to embrace that even more.
Well, good, Bryan. We are going to take a short break, but we are excited to come back and continue this conversation. So please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Maria, so how's work?
It was fourth period biology. Our students just weren't getting how easily viruses spread. So Miss Bell and I had them role play a zombie virus outbreak. By the time they had all learned the lesson, all the living were dead. Hey, how's your job going?
That big sales meeting I planned? Next year, I might get to go.
Cool.
We are neighbors and best friends.
I love my sister.
My heart doesn't see race. Love is love.
Our family is no less than any other family.
Today I'm going to talk to you about physics. Come on in, girls. Let's go. This is the first rocket to get humans to Mars.
Really tall.
I'm a rocket structural engineer, designing and building parts of the rocket. You are the generation that will be stepping foot on Mars. Do I have a group of astronauts on my hands?
Yes.
You can become a rocket scientist or whatever else you want to be.
It's all of our responsibility to slow the spread of the coronavirus. So follow guidance from authorities where you live and stay home unless absolutely necessary. You can still use your outdoor spaces like yards and decks. It's also okay to go for a walk or exercise outside. Wear a cloth face covering, stay at least 6 feet away from other people, try not to touch any surfaces, and wash your hands for at least 20 seconds as often as possible. Visit coronavirus.gov for the latest information.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Lindsey Davis Stover. And we're continuing our conversation this evening with Bryan Graham, who's chair of the Fairfax County Democratic Committee. Bryan, thank you again for being with us and sharing your evening with us here at the Inside Scoop.
Oh, happy to be here.
And Bryan, when we left off the last segment, we had talked about the level of participation and energy right now here in Fairfax County. And while so many of us are staying at home, clearly even this evening, we're not in the studio, we're both in our home offices. You know, talk about how people are really continuing to get engaged, especially during such an important moment in history that our country is going through now. And, you know, we have seen Black Lives Matter marches all over Fairfax County. We've seen them all over the Commonwealth and all over the country. And it's been incredible to see that level of enthusiasm. Can you talk a little bit about what FCDC is doing to be a part of this movement, and also some of the engagement that members have been involved in?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we've seen kind of an emergence of grassroots organizations. We've had hundreds of new members now compared to before. We actually created a new associate membership program because we had more members than we were allowed to have, basically. So we had to find a way to keep people engaged. The blue wave that started back in Prince William County and our neighbors, with electing Jackie Smith, clerk of the court, kind of has continued with, we won a special election for Karen Keys-Gamarra to the school board also in 2017. We had the statewide elections that turned into even more momentum by keeping the Democratic leadership in the country, or in the Commonwealth. Our community has continued to kind of develop, and the passion and advocacy has turned into things like the One Fairfax kind of joint resolution of the school board and the board of supervisors, ensuring that we are pushing for equity. And then of course we took control of the House. I already talked about Eileen Fillercorn, a Fairfax Democrat herself, becoming Speaker of the House. We in 2019, we elected a new Commonwealth attorney who on day one stopped prosecuting marijuana possessions, right, which are largely targeted at the African-American community or people of color, right? So, he has committed to working on, Steve Biscano has committed to working on ways to improve the criminal justice system here in Fairfax County in numerous ways, right? Since we've kind of have two kind of big movements and moments that are happening right now, right? That Fairfax County Democratic Committee is looking to seize upon. Obviously, the coronavirus has changed how we interact with people, and I think we'll probably talk about that in a moment. But the Black Lives Matter movement, the idea that there is systemic racism in our nation, in Virginia, and especially in Fairfax County, I mean, as Fairfax County organization, is something that we affirm. The thing that Fairfax County Democratic Committee has done specifically is we've created a task force to create an action plan that has specific action items that Fairfax County Democratic Committee can do itself to help make progress in this area, to embrace the movement, right? So as we talked about diversity, of course, Fairfax County Democratic Committee is more diverse than it was years ago, but we still do not represent, exactly proportionally the Black community in Fairfax County in our membership. The membership of FCDC, just kind of an estimate, is probably about 4% Black or African American, which does not reflect Fairfax County, right? So we are looking at ways to, we are going to, although I don't have a specific action plan yet, but I know we're going to do things. For example, we are going to do specific outreach to Black people of Fairfax County, to make sure that their voter registration is done, right? To make sure that they know how to vote by mail. We've been talking about it a couple of times, right? To have specific candidate training and recruitment to find more people of color in Fairfax County and help get them into offices. So we are looking to embrace that moment. And additionally, as you'll see in our meeting, or we'll continue to see our committee asking for criminal justice reform, and things like the removal of Confederate monuments. The school board has decided to rename Robert E. Lee High School, and they're coming up with a name soon. So we'll find out that. But there are other Confederate named schools and monuments in public spaces in Fairfax County that we would like to see removed as well. So we're kind of embracing that, and we're looking to take that as this is an opportunity to improve ourselves as an organization to reflect the community better.
That's fantastic, Bryan. Is the committee being active in pursuing the removal of Confederate statues and renaming schools? I mean, it's alarming, quite honestly, to see how many exist here in Fairfax County. And I just want to know, is the committee taking an active role and helping to support the elected leaders that are pushing for that? Or how can membership and even our viewers tonight help get involved with that movement and help the committee push that forward?
Right. So the committee itself passed a resolution that demanded the removal of Confederate monuments and kind of symbols across the country, federal, state, and local. So very generically, in addition to specifically asking for the removal of Robert E. Lee's name from the high school. So we have been active in that, including testimony to the school board about that. So they're about to come up with a new name for the high school. So if you're interested in that, I would encourage you as a citizen to go testify, get engaged in your government by talking to your elected officials, sending them a message, letting them know what you think is right and just. And that's how we're going to progress. Because if only the people that are upset about forgetting history when we're talking about schools that teach history, and if we only hear from the people that are dissenters, we're not going to make progress. We need everyone to push for the change that they want to see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I would just encourage our viewers to get involved at a local level. And I know, Bryan, we spoke in the last segment about the importance of local elections. And yes, this is a huge election year for so many different reasons. But our elected leaders here at the local level are the ones that really shape our day-to-day policy and, affect, what happens to our kids in our schools, to our roads, to our bridges, everything in our day-to-day life. So those viewers that are interested in these local issues, again, want to echo what Bryan said and encourage people to get involved and contact your local leaders. And in Fairfax County, you can contact your commissioner, you can contact your board of supervisors, your school board members. Just play an active role in the future of our community. And I want to take some time to talk about the pandemic. We've talked some about it before, but because this election is so important, right? And we continue to echo that, we can't say it enough. What will campaign look like? I mean, what will, volunteerism look like in the age of pandemic to ensure that people are getting out and voting in November? Can you talk a little bit about how that's going to look as we move closer and closer to Election Day?
Sure. If I can actually just go back though to your comment, I mean, there are a lot of people that are dissenting about the schools as an example, right? There are no good options right now for schools, right? You can't send everyone back and then have everyone be carriers, vectors of the virus and get everyone sick. You can't do that, right? And then finding ways of compromise of trying to allow people to go for a couple days or whatever is not much easier, especially when more students want to go back than teachers. And of course, we're hearing that we might even go all virtual without an option, just because we are continuing to see increases in the coronavirus cases. So I would say, I know the school board members are getting inundated by your comments, but also talk to your board of supervisors as well, because they control the purse strings, right? So just get in. It's easy to say get involved this year because it's a presidential election, but it's kind of sad to me that so many people don't get involved other than presidential elections, when, as you said, a lot of the decisions that affect you, like the school decision, come from our local and state governments, right? So, I encourage everyone to get involved, get involved next year when we're going to vote for a new governor and lieutenant governor and an attorney general. So, but back to your question about campaigning, what does campaigning look like in the coronavirus? It's a great question with not really a clear answer, because we don't really know exactly where this coronavirus is going to take us. But already we're seeing the campaigns across the state kind of embrace technology as a means to connect with the voters, right? So we're seeing a lot of phone banking and text banking. So I think we typically, as you get closer to election day, you see canvassing, you see people knock on your door and ask, what is your plan to go vote, or something like that. And if someone knocks on your door, they're probably just going to drop a piece of paper and run. They're probably not going to try to have a conversation with you, right? So everything's going to be a lot different this year. And I think, regardless of how engaged someone's been, because of a national election and a lot of people do vote, I think that people are going, regardless of your past involvement, you're probably going to get a text message from one candidate or another this year encouraging you to go vote by mail or whatever, right? And then you'll see digital advertising on TV, basically anything that can connect with the voter without having a person-to-person, like an in-person connection with that person. And I just said person like 8 times, but basically anything that will that doesn't involve person-to-person contact will be what we will embrace this year, and we'll see everywhere.
And that speaks a lot to how the committee will adapt in communicating to people. Do you see some of those same uses of technology? I mean, are those the types of techniques that the county is adapting so that the Fairfax County Democratic Committee can continue to connect with Democratic voters, but also new voters that have moved into our area? Can you talk a little bit how the committee is adapting?
Yeah, well, you talked about new voters, and actually, there are going to be so many people that are voting a new way for the first time this year that it's kind of crucially important that we communicate with them. The biggest kind of component typically is not telling someone how to vote. It's they're going to go to the polling place and then they do it, right? But we really do need to spend time and effort this year educating people on how to vote early, on what their options are. FCDC itself is looking at a number of different things that we do kind of typically, but we're looking to extend kind of into this coronavirus year. So one of the things that we typically do is we have an absentee program that encourages people that we think, like usually college-age students, things of that nature, people who haven't voted absentee before, but we think probably could. We'll mail them information about how to do that. So that's something that we'll do, but we'll also extend into social media campaigns, into a new informational website that will provide clear and concise information about how to do this. We're basically trying all kind of fronts, email, text messages, phone calls, whatever, to communicate with people on how to do that. And then we're also looking, I'm trying to follow the example of one of my previous chairs, Cesar del Aguila, who's a Herndon Town Council member. But when the voter ID laws changed in Virginia, he had FCDC create videos, I think in 22 languages, explaining the voter ID requirements and how, in terms of voter education, how does this change, and how do you do that? How do you vote? What do you need to vote? So I think we're looking to extend that as well as an idea to provide kind of short videos that tell people how to vote by mail, how to do it successfully. Because as we also saw in the primary election this past June, there were tens of thousands of ballots that went out, and then tens of thousands, about a little more than 10,000. I'm just thinking about the 11th congressional district. About 11,000, I think, absentee ballots didn't come back, right? So only about 75 or 80% of the ballots that were mailed out came back. And you don't know if that's just people, a timing or whatever else people got. When you get an absentee ballot in the mail, it's kind of intimidating. You've got like 3 sheets of instructions. There was an extra sheet of instructions that told you that the witness requirement didn't matter. You have 2 envelopes. You have the ballot itself. It's confusing. So we're looking at ways to communicate as well as we can to people in as many languages as we can how to vote successfully.
Well, that's going to lead into my next question, because a lot of talk you're hearing online. Is it going to be safe to go to the polls and vote? And if people aren't able to for health reasons, or, obviously just wanting to be extra careful right now during a time of the pandemic, can you talk a little bit about what options are available? The vote by mail is what you discussed before, but are there any other options that people can really utilize and need to make sure they research before Election Day?
Right. So the good news is that the General Assembly, who made a lot of progress in voting laws this past session in January, and one of the things that changed on January 1st is that you don't need a reason to vote absentee anymore. So I don't know if as a viewer, if you've tried to vote absentee before and you show up and they ask you what your reason is, or you have to look on the back of the sheet for the code or whatever, none of that happens anymore. So now you just say, I would like to vote absentee, and they say, and you fill out the form and they say, okay, right? So so there's kind of 2 ways to do absentee voting, and the first I kind of talked about, and I think we're kind of anticipating more people to do because it's viewed as safer, is voting by mail, absentee by mail. So there's a couple ways that you can do it. You can go to our website, fairfaxdemocrats.org, and there's an application link on the top of it. You can go to the Virginia State Board of Elections website as well. But there's a way to request your absentee ballot online without even mailing in a paper form that most people should be able to do. So I definitely we are encouraging people to vote early, and that means when we're voting by mail, because to give you an example, the Fairfax County Board of Elections anticipates about more than 400,000, maybe 500,000 absentee votes this year, which is just a little bit more than the total number of votes that happened in the 2016 presidential election in Fairfax County, which was kind of a low turnout year. But we're expecting a whole bunch of people to vote absentee by mail this year, and a lot of them are doing it for the first time. So that goes back to why I think it's important for FCDC, for the Fairfax County Democratic Committee, to help educate people on how to do that. So you can go to our website, fairfaxdemocrats.org. There's information about how to do this, as well as the other option. The other option is voting in person absentee. So I guess there's still risk. I think the idea about voting in person absentee is that you could do it at an off time, and there won't be as many people at the location. Fairfax County has 14 satellite locations throughout the county that the Board of Supervisors approved, where you can go during certain times of the year as we get close to Election Day. You can physically go there to show up and say you want to vote, and they will go you through the process, and you will vote right there. Then you don't have to find a stamp, put it in an envelope and mail it or anything. You can just show up, right? And then of course the other option is you can show up on Election Day on November 3rd. But those are kind of the 3 options. You can vote by mail, you can vote in person early, or you can vote on Election Day. And we have a whole bunch of information about that on our website.
Oh, good. I mean, that's critically important as people are trying to figure out their voter plan, right, for November. And those that want to vote absentee in person or on election day, what types of safeguards are put in the polling places to ensure that people can feel safe casting their vote?
Sure. So we had in June we had a primary election that was across the Virginia because we had a Republican Senate race. So all Fairfax County precincts were open in the June primary, and so we have practice on this, thankfully. So and the Fairfax County Board of Elections, they give them a lot of credit on all of their organization on that. They got PPE for all the election officers. They had a whole bunch of hand sanitizer, gloves, masks, face shields, all kinds of things that they put in place in kind of short order and distributed to all of the polling locations in the county. The process that was put in place as well kind of enforces social distancing. So all of the election officers, in addition to all of the people who are there voting, are asked to stay 6 feet apart. When you are kind of handing something to the election officers when you check in, you don't do it hand to hand. You put it down on a tray and then move it back and forth. There's hand sanitizer everywhere. They also gave out individual pens. So I was telling people to bring your own pen, but if you didn't do that, they bought a whole bunch of pens, and they were giving them out with the expectation of, or they didn't want to get them back.
Sure.
They did the same thing with the privacy folders. If you, I guess, the method of voting has changed and varies a little bit depending on where you are in the Commonwealth, but that's generally kind of what they did. But anything that was touched by the voters was either given to them to take away from the polling place or was thrown away, basically. So those were all the things that they put into place, and I think we'll probably see even more in November, for November.
That's great. Well, tell us a little bit how our viewers, those that may be watching our program this evening who aren't already involved in FCDC and do live in Fairfax County, can you talk a little bit about some of the ways that they can get involved with the Democratic Committee?
Of course, I think there's probably 3 ways that you could get involved with the Democratic Committee, and the first one's probably the easiest, and that's to give us money to donate. You don't have to be in Fairfax County to do that, but we take that money and kind of turn it into the things that I talked about in running, sending out postcards to voters and letting them know how to vote, in having targeted social media campaigns and things like that. All that costs money, right? But beyond that, we have a huge, robust volunteer organization of committed people that are working to get Democrats elected. The Democratic campaigns come and go year after year, but the Fairfax County Democratic Committee and the local committees, Democratic committees in Virginia, are the thing that persists. They're the organization that stays and helps kind of develop continued opportunities to improve in our area. So volunteering is a great thing, and we have volunteer opportunities from, although we're not doing it now, really, how to host an event. Although we're doing virtual events, but some people just want to open their home for an event or for canvassing or things like that, are kind of traditional things. But we're still doing fundraising. We're doing phone banking and text banking. We are doing precinct organization, precinct parties, house parties, all kinds of things like that. And our entire organization, with the exception of one staff member, is volunteer. So everything kind of happens from the will of the people, the Democratic people in Fairfax County. And in volunteering, you can go to our website to volunteer, or you can give us a call, and we'd be happy to connect you with all kinds of opportunities. And then last, we're a membership-based organization. We represent the Democrats of Fairfax County. So if you want to get involved, to have a say in things like endorsements and process, I know it's not for everyone, but the Fairfax County Democratic Committee kind of works to get Democrats elected and also to talk about democratic values. So we send messages to our electeds, asking for certain things. and it has more of a sway when we're representing kind of a fifth of the Democratic vote of Virginia. So there's a whole bunch of different ways to get involved as a member in constituent groups, issue groups, or just to get Democrats elected, and we'd love to have everyone.
Well, great, Bryan. We just have a few minutes, but can you tell us, are there any upcoming events that you'll be streaming online that our viewers could learn more about the committee and possibly participate in?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Fairfax County Democratic Committee is still kind of entirely virtual. We have our next countywide meeting. So that's all of membership meeting on July 28th. But all FCDC meetings are open to the public. But nothing that the Fairfax County Democratic Committee or the Democratic Party overall does is a secret, right? So we would love to have you, and they might not be the best opportunity to get to meet someone one-on-one like a regular in-person meeting would be, but you could get a good idea of what we do as an organization through those meetings, because we're going to have a couple resolutions, we're going to hear updates on the campaign, things of that nature, and we're even talking about how we're going to endorse in the Herndon Town Council and mayoral races. So that's kind of some of the things you do, and I'd love to have anyone on July 28th at 7:30 p.m. The best way to see all of our events is to go to the Fairfax County Democratic Committee website, fairfaxdemocrats.org. We have a calendar that gets updated not just with our events, but also with campaign events. So if you want to get involved in the campaigns this year as well, or any year, it's a good place to go to find phone banking opportunities and text banking opportunities. Right now is kind of the biggest thing. But there are hundreds of things on that calendar, and there are very few days that don't have anything on them. So we would love to have you and love for you to get involved. And then I guess I'll just put in a plug while I can for, we have an annual fundraiser, which we call the Jefferson Obama Dinner, which we're hoping that we could do earlier in the year and moved, and then we're moving again. But it's going to be a virtual dinner this year. So, and I'm not exactly sure when we'll do it, probably in September, but we're kind of waiting for a really big name to join us as our special guest. So that's something we'll be doing, and we're doing some kind of innovative, interesting things where we will deliver you food for the virtual dinner. So I look forward to have everyone's support for that as well.
Well, fantastic. Thank you, Bryan, so much for joining us this evening. And I know that the Fairfax County Democratic Committee is also on Facebook, on Twitter, and I urge everyone who is interested in learning more about the committee to please get involved and take a look and learn more about who is going to be on the ballot in November. So thank you all for joining us this evening. A special thank you to Bryan Graham for joining us and for all of the incredible information you gave us tonight. We look forward to seeing you next time. Good night.